When I close my eyes, I still see them, horns like spears, eyes like voids, and that sound low, ancient, like something remembering how to kill. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. I lie in the dark and wait for the silence to end, because the silence is never real. Eventually, it comes, the distant, steady thud of hose on ground that shouldn't echo, and the hum that starts so quietly it feels like your own blood in your ears. But it's not. You want to know who I am? My name doesn't matter anymore. It used to. I used to have a life, a job, routines. I thought I understood the rules of the world. I thought if you respected nature, it would respect you back. But the mountain changed that. No, it erased it. What matters now is the place I escaped from, barely. A place that shouldn't exist. It's called Bison Ridge on old forestry maps, but no one uses that name anymore. Most maps don't label it at all. It's just a raised scar on the western range. Remote, unwelcoming, and wrong. I went there thinking I'd spend a few days cataloging terrain and checking for wildlife patterns. A quick assignment. In and out. Nothing more than a job. There were rumors, of course. Warnings passed in quiet tones, mostly from people with sun-wrinkled faces who stopped talking when you asked too many questions. I thought it was folklore, local color. But you don't understand something until it touches you. The mountain, it's not haunted the way people like to imagine. There are no flickering lights or transparent shapes. What waits there doesn't rattle chains or moan in the dark. It waits. It watches. And when it moves, it does so with a memory far older than ours. You feel it long before you see it, like the air gets thicker, like your thoughts start slipping from your hands. They told me bison still roam that mountain. What they didn't say is that they walk in patterns, that they appear in places they shouldn't, that their eyes don't blink, that their breath fogs when the air is warm, that their bodies are heavy but leave no prints behind. I saw things on that mountain I can't explain. I found tracks that led nowhere, trees that grew in unnatural symmetry, sound that didn't echo but repeated, just slightly off, like the mountain was remembering them in real time. I'm telling this now not because I want to. Honestly, I wish I could forget, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It follows me, in shadows, in dreams, in the silence between my thoughts. I still find dust from the trail on my clothes, even though I burned everything I wore. There are marks on my skin that I don't remember getting. And at night, I still hear the chanting. Low, rhythmic, not in words, in intention. This isn't a ghost story. It's older, and it's wrong. I make my living off the land, or at least that's the simple version. I document survival strategies, test gear, catalog animal behaviors. My videos get decent views. People like seeing someone sleep in a tarp lean-to while a snowstorm rolls in. I don't fake any of it. I don't need to. Nature's never been short on danger. I've been through a lot of backcountry terrain. Yukon, Alberta, Utah deserts. I thought I'd seen just about every trick the wild could throw at a person. Then came the email. No subject line. No signature. Just coordinates, latitude and longitude, and a message. Field mapping request. Document and report terrain, wildlife, and man-made anomalies. 3-day mission. Full discretion. $12,000 wire transfer upon completion. At first, I figured it was a scam, but I clicked the link. It opened a topographical view. Remote section of the Rockies, somewhere west of Jasper, but east of the common hiking ranges. I zoomed in, expecting the usual ridgelines and forestry trails. Nothing. No roads. No trail markers. Just elevation and the shadow of a peak. I replied, asking for details. The answer came 2 hours later. Private land. Off-grid retreat assessment. You'll be alone. Bring whatever you need. No support. Payment confirmed once files are uploaded. That should have been the point I closed the laptop and moved on. But I didn't, because 12 grand for 3 days is good money, and because, if I'm honest, I like the challenge. The wilderness has always been where I feel most in control, or at least where the rules are clear. I pack for high altitude, rations, fire starter, drone for aerial mapping, camera gear, solar backup. I included a short wave just in case, though I knew I'd be out of range for most of it. The next day, I fueled up and drove north, crossing familiar valleys and rivers until the roads began to narrow. I hit a small town late afternoon, barely more than a general store, gas pump, and a diner with one dusty window. I figured I'd stop, grab a last real meal, maybe ask around, just to see. I showed the coordinates to the man at the counter. Mid-60s, leathered skin, a face that looked like it had been carved by years of dry wind. He didn't even glance at the screen, just stared at me. Then he said, "You headed to Hallowed Horns?" I paused. "I don't know. It's just a mountain. Got a job to do." He shook his head slowly, like someone realizing they were watching a car head straight for a cliff. "You can call it what you want. Doesn't change what it is." I laughed. "You got any trail maps for that area?" His jaw worked for a second before he muttered, "There aren't any." I figured he meant the area was just uncharted. But there was something about the way he said it. Like it wasn't a matter of forgetting, more like avoidance. "A lot of land up there," I said casually. "Doesn't seem like many folks head out that way." He just looked at me, then leaned closer. And I remember this part because his breath smelled like metal and pine smoke. And he said, "The bison ain't been right since the sky cracked open." He didn't explain, didn't offer context, just turned and walked into the back room. I should have asked more. I should have pressed. But I was tired. I wrote it off as backwoods superstition. You hear things in towns like that. My channel's filled with clips of folks warning me about haunted creeks or cursed bear dens. I ate my meal in silence. No one else came in. When I left, I noticed something strange. There were dozens of antlers nailed to the side of the diner. Big ones. Elk, moose, caribou. But no bison. The next morning, I parked the truck as far as the logging road would let me. The rest was on foot. There was no welcome sign. No cleared path. Just forest, dense and sharp with cold air. The kind of silence you only get at altitude. No bird song. No breeze. Just the sound of my own boots sinking into frost-covered needles. The climb started gradual. I checked my GPS every few hours, but the readings glitched more than usual. At one point, the screen froze, even though the battery was full and the weather was clear. Still, I made progress. Shot some footage. Took notes on soil conditions and vegetation. Everything felt normal, more or less, until I found the stones. Out in a clearing, miles from anything, stood a circle of upright boulders, rough but arranged, like they hadn't fallen that way, like something had placed them with care. There were markings too, not carvings exactly, more like the rock had been worn in precise shapes. Lines, horns, eyes. Some of them were shaped like animals, but not quite. I felt watched, not the way you feel on a busy trail. This was different. I hadn't seen a single squirrel or bird since entering the zone. No tracks, no scat, just those stones and stillness that pressed against the base of my skull. I told myself I was imagining it, that this was just isolation playing tricks on my instincts. So I kept walking. I told myself I'd finish the job, map the area, document whatever I could, but something had already noticed me, and it didn't care about the job. It didn't care about the money. It cared that I had entered, that I had crossed a line. And once you're in, something changes. You stop feeling like a visitor and start to feel like you're being weighed, like the land is trying to decide what to do with you. I made camp that night on a ridge above a frozen stream. I remember thinking the sky looked too low, like it was pressing down on the peak. And I remember how quiet everything stayed. No wind, no distant howl, just the deep, endless quiet of a mountain holding its breath. I didn't know it then, but I'd already gone too far. This wasn't just wilderness. It was waiting. I broke camp early the next morning. The air had that kind of chill that clings even when the sun's up. I boiled coffee, forced down an energy bar, and packed up fast. The coordinates led farther northeast. Upward, the terrain shifted. What was once thick forest began to thin, replaced by bare rock and crooked trees that looked like they'd been struck repeatedly by lightning. It was beautiful in a way I can't explain. Stark, hollow, like a photograph of something that used to live. By noon, I realized I hadn't seen so much as a squirrel since arriving. No rabbits darting through the brush. No birds overhead. I listened carefully. Nothing. Not even the hum of insects. I told myself it was altitude. That maybe I climbed into a dead zone. Some regions get quiet in winter. Migration patterns. Cold snaps. Still, it didn't feel normal. I've camped in winter forests before. They're quieter, sure, but never this empty. I pressed on. The GPS cut out entirely by midday. Battery was full. Backup battery, too. I tried my compass next. The needle jittered, then spun slowly in a full circle before settling on nothing at all. I tried not to focus on that. Instead, I focused on the next ridge, and then the one after. The ground started changing. Less leaf litter. Less sign of erosion. More stone, more lichen, more frostbitten moss stretched thin across boulders. And then I found them. Hoof prints. Big. Too big. I stopped and crouched next to them. They were deep. The kind of depth that says weight, not just pressure from movement. And they weren't scattered like you'd expect from a herd. They were spaced out. Deliberate. Even stranger was the shape. Not rounded like elk or deer. These had angles. Precise edges, like something had stamped them into the earth. Symmetrical, each one nearly the same size. As if measured, I measured one against my boot, size of a dinner plate. I tried telling myself it was just an old bull, maybe a bison had passed through during thaw season and left imprints that got weathered just right. Maybe the mountain was playing tricks on perspective, but the depth was fresh. There'd been no melt. And the path didn't wander. The prints led in a perfect line. Uphill, I didn't follow them. Not then. I kept the original route, which started to narrow the higher I climbed. Trees gave way to stone. Fog crept in along the edges like a slow breath rolling through the valley. It carried a faint scent I couldn't place. Something dry. I set up camp earlier than usual. My legs were shaking, though I hadn't walked more than 12 miles. Something about the air made each breath harder to catch. The pressure didn't feel like altitude. It felt like being watched. But I hadn't seen anything. No lights. No sounds. Just those hoof prints in the snow and the cold silence pressing against everything. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't know the exact time. I heard it. Hoofbeats. Steady. Heavy. Measured. They didn't thunder. They didn't charge, just a slow-pacing rhythm, circling the tent. I held my breath. The pattern didn't break. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. It moved like something ancient, like it remembered this routine and saw no reason to rush. I reached for the knife by my side, not because I thought it would help, but because empty hands felt worse. And then the sound stopped, just stopped. I waited, listening. My heartbeat thudding in my ears. Minutes passed. Or hours. I don't know. Eventually, I fell asleep. Not real sleep. More like the body shutting down out of exhaustion. When I woke, the tent was soaked in mist. Thick, heavy fog had blanketed the ridge. I could barely see 2 feet in front of me. I stepped outside expecting to see prints. Indents. Anything. But the ground was untouched. No markings. No broken branches, no tracks, nothing, just that silence again, that endless, stretching silence that didn't echo, like sound itself refused to exist here. I started questioning things. Maybe the elevation was messing with me. Maybe I dreamt the hoofbeats. But dreams don't pace in circles. Dreams don't stop when you hold your breath. And dreams don't leave the scent of dry earth hanging in the air. I kept moving. Not because I wanted to, but because staying still felt worse. The mountain was watching. I couldn't prove it, but I knew, not in my head, in my bones. There's a kind of fear that doesn't need proof. It just is. And the farther I went, the heavier that knowing became. The trail, if you could call it that, began to change on the 3rd day. Not the way a trail disappears under snow or vanishes into a thicket. No. I mean, it would twist behind me when I wasn't looking, bend in new directions. I glanced back at a stone outcropping I just passed, and it wouldn't be there. A dead pine I marked with a strip of orange tape somehow stood 10 paces ahead of me an hour later. I stopped trusting the land. The GPS had long since stopped responding. Compass was still useless. I tried to sketch my route by hand, but even that became a joke. What looked like a straight walk turned into a loop when I retraced my steps. A jagged rock face I thought I was climbing toward ended up behind me. It felt like the mountain didn't want me to know where I was going, or maybe it didn't care. Maybe it wanted me to keep moving until I forgot why I started. Around mid-afternoon, I heard the first sound I'd heard in hours. Low, guttural, like a grunt dragged out through thick lungs. Bison. I thought, finally, something real. The sound came from the ridgeline above. I climbed. Careful steps. Slow breathing. I didn't want to startle them. I've tracked bison before. They're not aggressive if you keep your distance. But if they charge, you don't get a second chance. The fog thinned near the top, and that's where I saw it. A tree, old and hollowed, stood in the center of the ridge, bark stripped bare on one side. Symbols, carved deep, crude spirals intersected by jagged lines, like runes scratched in haste or desperation. They weren't random. They were arranged. Each mark connected to another like pieces of something larger, like a map that only made sense if you knew how to read it. I touched one of the cuts. The wood was dry, flaked around the edges, but the grooves were clean, fresh, like they'd been made recently. Then I looked up. There were more, on the trees around me. High, too high. Some gouges started 8 feet off the ground, dragging downward as if something tall, something standing, had raked its limbs across the bark while passing through. I stood there staring, trying to make sense of it. That's when I saw it, on the opposite slope. Still, immense. A bison, but not like any I'd ever seen. It stood too tall. Its shoulders were nearly as high as a man, fur so dark it absorbed the light, horns that arched out like ancient weapons. Its head tilted slightly, just enough to suggest it saw me. It didn't move, not an inch. I froze, breath locked in my chest. I've watched animals long enough to understand when they're alert, when they're curious. This didn't blink, didn't twitch, didn't breathe, just stood there. I stepped back slowly, not turning my back, just shifting my weight. The fog rolled again, thick and quiet. I blinked. It was gone. No sound, no broken twigs, no hoof prints, nothing. The slope where it stood was empty. I walked to where it had been. My hand was shaking. My boots slid on the loose gravel. Nothing. No marks, but I had seen it. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, a shadow from a tree. Maybe the fog formed a shape and my brain filled in the rest. But there were no trees nearby, and shadows don't watch you. I sat down, not because I wanted to, but because my legs gave out. My body was catching up to something my mind hadn't accepted yet. I wasn't tracking anything. I was being led. And whatever it was letting me see only what it wanted to show. I checked my watch. It had stopped ticking. The screen was frozen, just 2 dashes where the time should be. I tried to laugh. It came out dry. I drank the last of my water, ate half a protein bar, and didn't taste any of it. Then I stood up. There were no trails now, no sense of direction, only instinct. And instinct told me I was walking somewhere I wasn't meant to find. But my feet kept moving, because stopping felt worse, like something might notice. And waiting would give it time to decide what to do with me. I didn't expect to find anything human this far in. The map they'd given me, the one that wasn't really a map, had no marks here, no structures, just topography and a red that where I was supposed to go. But there it was, tucked between a bend in the tree-line and a ridge like a scar in the stone. A ranger lodge, half collapsed. The roof had buckled inward, one side eaten away by time and wind. Shingles scattered across the ground like bones. But the front door, what remained of it, was open, barely hanging. I hesitated, not out of fear, not yet, just confusion. This place shouldn't be here. And yet it was. Inside, dust coated everything. Years thick. No signs of recent life. But the air didn't smell stale. It smelled wrong. Like something had once filled this place completely and had only recently left. There was a fireplace to the right. An old radio console bolted to the far wall. Shelf wickings long expired. Labels curled and flaking. A cot sagged in the corner. The mattress barely more than threads. And on the desk, a stack of journals. I opened the top one. The paper was yellowed, fragile, but the ink was sharp, almost too sharp. The first page was dated 1947. The writer didn't give a name, just referred to himself as Ranger W. Most of the entries were mundane. Patrol logs, weather patterns, animal sightings. Until midway through the second journal, things shifted. Words grew shorter. Sentences started trailing off. Then I found this. Night herds, not normal, not natural, move without tracks. Seen from the ridge at dusk. Too many to count. Too quiet. Another entry a few pages later. Third warning from the council. Told me to stop asking. Said the mountain knows what it's doing. That's their phrase. The calling will sort the worthy. Calling. Capitalized. Repeated in later notes. The calling is never heard, only felt. You'll know it when your bones start humming. The last entry was short. 5 words. Don't look in their eyes. That's where the voices live. I read it 3 times. Then I stopped. I don't know why, but I couldn't keep going. I sat back. The journals clutched tight in my hand. My breath was shallow without me noticing, like my body was bracing for something I hadn't yet seen. I stood and walked over to the radio console. It looked like it hadn't worked in decades. Wires exposed, knobs broken, but a small reel-to-reel recorder sat next to it, still intact. Curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. It started with static, then tones. Not music, not a voice, just low, rising frequencies, like something searching for a pattern. Then chanting, not words, not any I recognized, just voices, low and layered, all speaking at once. Some slow, some fast, then silence, complete. The machine word, but nothing came out. I didn't press stop. I just backed away. That kind of silence doesn't belong to the world. It doesn't come from emptiness. It comes from something being removed, like sound itself had been torn out of the room. I left the machine running and stepped outside. The trees looked closer than before, and the fog, thinner now, clung to the ground like it was hiding something underneath. I should have felt relieved to find the lodge, shelter, evidence of other people. But instead, I felt like I'd stepped into a place that had been waiting too long for someone to return, like it remembered me, even if I'd never been there before. I looked back at the journals in my hand, at the words burned into the final page. Don't look in their eyes. That's not a metaphor. That's a rule. And rules like that, they come from experience, from failure, from watching someone break it and never come back. I slept in the corner of the lodge that night, or I tried to, because somewhere near midnight, the chanting started again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the recorder. The fog came in faster than weather should. One minute I could see the tree lean. The next, it was as if the whole world had exhaled and forgotten how to stop. It wrapped the lodge in white. Thick, wet, soundless. I stood at the doorway, unsure what I was seeing or not seeing. My breath made no cloud. The temperature hadn't changed, but my skin tightened. The kind of cold that doesn't come from the air. And then I heard them again. Low, heavy, hoofbeats. Many of them, but slower this time. Dragging. Not the charge of animals migrating or fleeing. This was methodical, like each step had purpose. I told myself to stay inside. That, whatever this was, the walls might still mean something. But the sound kept growing. And then I noticed something wrong. It wasn't just the hoofbeats. There was something else layered in. Breathing, but not the kind you'd expect from animals that size. It was close. Too close. Shallow, wheezing exhales. Dry. Labored. Human. They were circling the lodge. I backed away from the door. My instinct screamed to hide. Not run, not fight, just vanish. I found a crawl space hatch under the rotted rug in the corner. I'd noticed it earlier, but hadn't thought it mattered. Now it felt like the only place left. The wood groaned as I lowered myself down. The hatch wouldn't close completely anymore, swollen and warped, but I managed to pull it down just enough to let me see through the floorboards above. And I waited. They came soon after. I heard the boards on the porch creak, not under weight, but under presence. The door didn't open. There was no need. They were already inside. I saw hooves through the cracks, but they didn't make sense. They touched the floor without standing on it. They didn't connect to legs. They cast no proper shadows, just flickers like burned edges on film. And where the hooves touched the wood, static bloomed. Not sound, not light, just interference. I pressed myself flat against the dirt below. My heart was trying to punch its way out through my ribs. I covered my mouth with both hands and breathed through my nose, slow, shallow, quiet. One of them stopped, right above me. Its shadow moved without rhythm. It shivered in place, twitching along the edges. Then it spoke, not loud, not clear, just enough to reach me. A voice too low to be human, but shaped like it remembered how to be. You came to be counted. I froze. The voice didn't ask. It declared. It wasn't a question. It was a toll, and I was already on the list. Another voice answered from somewhere deeper in the lodge. Different tone, different cadence, but the same message. He walks in thought, but bears a mark. Then silence again. No breathing, no movement, just the crackling sound of the air itself fraying at the edges. I don't know how long I stayed there. Time had stopped meaning anything. Eventually, the floor above me was empty again. The fog hadn't lifted, but the presence had. I waited until I couldn't hear anything. Then I waited longer. When I finally crawled back up, my body ached from tension. My legs didn't want to stand. I opened the hatch slowly. The lodge looked untouched, but the journals were gone. The recorder was still there, but the tape had unraveled. I stepped outside, and the ground, where there had been grass, soil, old leaves, was now marked. Dozens of hoof prints, but not in any direction. Just a circle, a perfect ring around the lodge, like something had measured it and claimed it. I stood in the center of that ring, and I understood then, whatever this place is, it isn't just forgotten, it's waiting. And I had just stepped inside its memory. I didn't intend to keep walking. Not after the fog, not after the crawl space, not after what spoke. But my body had its own logic now. It moved because stopping meant being found. Or worse, noticed. The woods grew tighter. Trees older, bark flaked like dried skin. I walked without aim, driven by something between instinct and refusal. And then I saw it, a break in the trees ahead. A clearing, perfectly round, like something massive had pressed down long ago and nothing dared grow back. At first, I thought it was empty. Then they stepped into view, one by one, bison-shaped but wrong. Too tall. Their bodies stood like men, but every inch carried a memory of horn and hide. They didn't move like people, didn't sway like animals. They stood rooted, as if grown from the soil. And their heads, they wore masks, not to hide, to show, carved from bone, long, pointed, cracked with age but clean, like they'd been waiting to be worn again. And they hummed, not music, not prayer, a tone that bent on itself, changing as it stayed the same. The sound moved without moving, as if the air remembered a language no one should ever speak. I dropped to the ground before I even thought to hide. There was a fallen tree, thick with moss, and I pressed myself against it, watching through a split in the bark. They didn't notice me. Not yet. The humming grew louder, each figure tilting slightly, rhythmically, like trees caught in a tide. Then something else emerged from the other side of the circle. Two more of them, dragging a human, bound in rope, arms trembling, face twitching with terror. I couldn't see clearly, but the twitching, it wasn't natural, like their muscles didn't belong to them anymore. They placed a person, man or woman, I couldn't tell, right at the center of the ring, and then every bison figure moved. At once, all heads tilted toward the bound one. Slow, heavy, with a weight that pushed the forest back. The humming stopped. Silence didn't follow. Instead, something hung in the air, charged, raw, expectant. Then the largest among them stepped forward. It held something. A stone slab, flat and dark. Not rock from this place. It looked carved, not by hands that feared, by hands that remembered. Atop the stone, fixed like a crown, were antlers, etched deep with marks that didn't seem like writing, but felt like they meant something. The figure raised the stone above its head. The rest began to hum again, but slower now. And I realized something. It wasn't random. It wasn't ritual for the sake of it. It was timing, a countdown. And I couldn't move. My legs were gone. My breath stayed locked in my chest. The bound figure began to convulse. Their mouth opened, no scream. Just air, like the sound had already been taken. And then the stone came down. Or it would have, because just before the strike, everything went black. Not a blink, not unconsciousness. The world stopped. Not night, not sleep. Something else. A halt, an absence. And in that absence, I heard something. Not outside, inside. Not words, but knowing. A voice that didn't speak. A message that didn't care if I wanted to understand. You saw. You stayed. Now you're part. And then I woke in the dirt. Alone. The clearing was empty. No tracks. No blood. No rope. No stone. Just me. And the mark left in the grass. A circle again. But this one wasn't pressed into the ground. It was burned into it. Still warm. And I wasn't sure if I was supposed to have left, or if I'd been sent. When I opened my eyes, morning light filtered through the tent walls. No ash, no markings, no humming, just sky, blue, empty, ordinary. I lay there for a while, letting the quiet seep in, trying not to move too quickly. My fingers twitched. My thoughts felt stacked on top of one another, blurry and unaligned. The smell of pine was strong, clean. I looked around. Everything was where it should have been. Stove, pack, journal, camera, boots. Wait, they weren't mine. Not the boots. They were worn, cracked leather, laces different lengths, soles smoothed down with time. My boots were stiff and new, a recent purchase. I remember debating the price. I remember the blisters from breaking them in. These had walked somewhere long before I ever came up here. I sat up fast, adrenaline kicking in. My journal was on the camp table, the same waterproof cover, the same tear in the corner. I flipped it open. My handwriting was gone. Every page now filled with symbols I couldn't place. Loops, crosses, long strokes that trailed off the edges. Ink that didn't smear. It looked etched in like the paper had accepted it. I checked the date on my watch. It hadn't changed, but I had no memory of writing a single page. No memory of swapping boots. No memory of returning to the tent. The mountain air felt heavier now. Not wrong. Just watching. I packed fast. I didn't even eat. I knew I had to get down. Off the slope. Back to anything that resembled normal. But the trail didn't follow. Every step I took down brought me back to where I started. Paths I marked with strips of orange tape vanished. Compass spun without meaning. GPS wouldn't load. Time shifted strangely. Sometimes I walked for minutes and the sun jumped an hour. Other times, I hiked for hours and the light never changed. I screamed at the trees, cursed the sky. At one point, I even tried running straight downhill, bushwhacking through thorns and saplings. I ended up at my tent again. Food supply dwindled. Water ran low. The map, the one they never gave me, mocked me by its absence. It took 3 days, or something like it. On the morning of the third day, I saw it. A clearing, not the same one, but real this time. No figures, no humming, no circle. Just a signpost. Faded green. Letters worn by weather and time. Ranger Station, 1.6 miles. I didn't think. I just moved, legs aching, throat raw, boots foreign but holding. When I reached it, I collapsed inside the open doors of a squat, sun-faded structure. It smelled of dust and coffee long gone stale. A man stepped out from behind a desk. Late 60s maybe, eyes tired, tan lines from sunglasses. He looked at me, looked past me, like I wasn't quite in focus. "You all right?" he asked. I couldn't speak right away. I just nodded, handing over my camera. I was sent to map the western side. I said finally, "Hallowed horns." I went up, spent a few nights. I think I saw some things. His face didn't change. He took the camera, looked it over like he didn't expect it to turn on. "That mountain," he said, "it burned, back in '94. Lightning strike hit the North Ridge, spread fast, wiped out everything. No one goes near it, not for years." "But there's a lodge," I said, half buried. There were journals, something about night herds, symbols. I recorded it all. He didn't respond. I took the camera back and scrolled. Footage was there, file sizes full, dozens of clips, but they didn't show what I saw. No lodge, no herd, no stone circle. Only me, walking, sitting, staring, hours of it, unblinking, fixed on trees, as if waiting for something. Sometimes I mumbled, but the audio was corrupted. Words melted into static. Lips moved, but not with any language I knew. One clip froze my blood. I was standing motionless near a tree. Camera pointed at my face. My mouth open wide, wider than it should, jaw slack, and I whispered, "You came to be counted." The same words I'd heard in the crawl space. Only this time, I was the one saying them. The ranger offered a glass of water. I didn't take it. I asked if I could leave the camera there, just in case. He nodded, didn't ask questions. I walked out. The sun was too bright. When I got in my truck, I checked the glove box. My original boots were there, folded neatly. I didn't remember doing that either. I still don't know what happened on that mountain. I don't know who or what dragged that man into the circle, or if he was me, or if I left. Sometimes I still dream I'm up there, still walking, and the path keeps folding behind me, quiet, waiting for me to remember the rest. I still can't sleep, not like before. It's not the dreams. I wish it were the dreams. At least then I could point to something, a shape, a memory, a moment that could be explained or ignored. But sleep never comes long enough for dreams anymore. I lie there most nights, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint, listening, always listening. And just outside the window, every single night, I hear them. Hoofbeats, not distant, not galloping, just slow, measured, like they know I can hear them, like they're pacing, waiting for something. The sound never fades. It stops when I get up to look, but it comes back the moment I return to bed. I haven't stepped near a pasture since. I can't even look at cattle now. Their eyes track too long, too still, like they remember me, like they expect me to remember them too. There was a day, a few weeks ago, when I noticed something on my chest in the shower. It looked like a bruise at first, blue-gray, shallow. I pressed into it, thinking maybe I'd walked into something, but it didn't hurt. It didn't fade either. By the next morning, it had changed. Lines, arched and precise, thin, too perfect to be natural. Antlers, carved low and branching. I can run my fingers over them now. Raised but faint, like it was etched just beneath the skin, meant to stay quiet and less noticed. I haven't told anyone, not friends, not doctors, not even myself, out loud, because the truth is, I'm afraid of what happens if I acknowledge it, if I confirm what I already know, that maybe I never came back at all, that maybe there's no me to come back. Every morning, I wake in a room that looks like mine, with clothes I picked, books I own, but it all feels just a little off. The walls lean wrong. The mirror lags behind my reflection. And every sunrise, I swear I can smell smoke, not the kind from a fireplace, the kind that eats forests, the kind that comes after lightning. I used to mark my days by time, by meals, by work, by errands. Now I mark them by distance, how far I feel from that place. And the worst part is, I'm getting closer. Each sunrise, something in me shifts, not forward, not backward, but sideways, back towards something I left behind, or thought I did. I thought I escaped. But every morning, I wake up just a little closer to the mountain again. Maybe I never left. Maybe I only moved outside the circle. Maybe I was never meant to be free of it. And sometimes when I'm alone long enough, when I let the quiet stretch too far, I hear them again. Not hoofbeats, not breath, just voices, whispers, low and warping, barely words, except one, the one they never stop repeating. You came to be counted, one of us now. If this story unsettled you, if it stayed with you longer than expected, subscribe to my channel for more stories that don't end where you think they will. Some doors never close, and some trails always loop back.